So the Pentagon sent out a memo last month talking about gender dysphoria in the military and how it's no longer going to be accepted. Now, obviously, this only tailors to a small percentage or small group of people in the entire DoD, but it's kind of crazy how this thing has evolved over the years because when I enlisted back in 2008, there was a don't ask, don't tell policy. And if you were gay, and if that was something that fit the lifestyle you lived, the military would kick you out, no questions asked. And then they repealed it, and then you were allowed to be openly gay and serve in the military. And that's been going on for the last 15 plus years. Same with being transgender or having gender dysphoria. Once upon a time, you could not do that at all. It was a permanent disqualifier in the military. And then it became a thing to where you could openly serve as a transgender in the military, or you could change your sexual orientation, preference, and whatnot, and then no one really cared in terms of policymakers because that's something that they allowed at the time. So you'd have men who are identifying as women who would be calling ma'am. You would have women who were identifying as men being called sir, this and that. And on top of that, the military, they were paying for the surgeries, the gender reconstruction surgeries, the hormonal treatments, X, Y, and Z. I actually knew somebody when I was a combat instructor as one of our corpsmen that we had. He was a male. He went through his transition surgery. This was back in like 2015. He came back like 8, 9 months later as a female. Served the rest of her time in the military. Don't know whatever happened to her, but I saw it firsthand. Did it really affect anything? No. Did anyone really care? No. It kind of just was what it was. One day he was a he came back as a she. It is what it is. But now, in 2025, this is going away because the new administration came in and they're now trying to get things back to how they were once upon a time. So now they're saying if you are a transgender, if you had any gender forming conforming surgery or anything like that, you have 30 days to essentially come forward and either start the I fall into this category, I'm voluntarily getting out of the military, or you can be involuntarily told and processed out. But there's a key difference between the two. If you voluntarily separate yourself, which is saying, hey, I come forward, this is me and whatnot, you get paid twice the amount of separations pay as you would receive if you were involuntary separated. So one of the examples they give here on the Pentagon's website is this, and I thought this was actually pretty crazy. So it says, as an example, an E5 service member, which is a sergeant, with 10 years of service would collect $101,628 in voluntary separation pay, while the same service member, a same E5 with 10 years, would collect 50,814 if they were involuntary separated. So if you voluntarily do it, you get twice the amount as if you were, non-voluntary. Now, that's for younger Marines and whatnot. But if you're between the ranks, I'm sorry, but if you're between the years of service of 18 to 20, you could be eligible for early retirement. So it's not for nothing, but they're trying to get the military back to a place that it was once upon a time. And here's the policy that the Pentagon put out. It says, it is the policy of the United States government to establish high standards for service member readiness, lethality, cohesion, honesty, humility, uniformity, and integrity. The policy memorandum reads, this policy is inconsistent with the medical, surgical, and mental health constraints on individuals with gender dysphoria or who have current diagnosis or history of or exhibit symptoms consistent with gender dysphoria. And it says, members affected by this policy may apply for and be considered for a waiver on a case-by-case basis if there is compelling government interest in retaining that service member who directly supports warfighting. Not the military, it says warfighting. So like anything in the military, waivers can happen. But basically, like anything in the military, there is a waiver process and there is a waiver that you can apply for. And if it gets approved, which waivers do on a case-by-case basis, you can continue to serve. But this policy goes on to say that if if you are allowed to stay, if you are retained in the military, you must follow the sexual orientation, right? Your biological sex when it comes to PT standards when it comes to using words such as sir and ma'am and whatnot. So if I'm a male who identifies as a female, but I get a waiver and able to be retained as a male, I must perform the male physical fitness standards. And I must be addressed as sir, not ma'am, despite my pronouns or what I want to be identified as. Now, can I see the military approving waivers when it comes to this? As a whole, no, but on a case by case with specific branches, perhaps. I don't know how that would work or how that would go necessarily, but the fact of the matter is, they're giving people an opportunity to get out and get something for it, so it's not for nothing. Now, this kind of contradicts the hey, we're looking for the best, most qualified people to serve in the military, because some would argue that just because you are transgender or you have gender dysphoria or whatnot doesn't mean you're not qualified to serve. And I agree and like disagree with that. Yes, are you qualified to serve? Of course. Can you do the job? Yes. Can you do it just as good as someone who identifies as whatever? Sure, I don't disagree with that at all. But when it comes to war fighting, when it comes to hormones and things like that, it can kind of get tricky, because I've met a few people who've been going down that route who have experienced some symptoms that some would argue are not in line with military service. So again, I'm not a doctor. My opinion is just that, an opinion, but I can see where this policy is coming from and why they would say something like this at the first. And lastly, it kind of hits on the recruiting effort too, and it says, in addition to affecting existing service members, those who are already serving in the military, members, it says the policy memorandum also states applicants for military service and individuals in delayed entry programs, which are poolies, those who are getting ready to go to boot camp, who have a current diagnosis or history of or exhibit current symptoms consistent with gender dysphoria, are permanently disqualified from military service. So if you're considering joining the military right now and you have gender dysphoria, even if you have a waiver that's been entertained at a MICRIC or current enlistment or whatever level, you're not going to be able to serve. Question is, what are your thoughts on this? Because some people, they say, hey, if you don't fit the mold that the military is trying to make, right? Males, females, this and that, hey, you should be kicked out, never allowed to serve. But others argue, say, hey, it doesn't matter how you are, what you identify as, what your orientation is and whatnot, you should be able to serve. There's like a huge divide between those who are for and those who are against this policy, because it's crazy. When I joined back in 2008, don't ask, don't tell was a thing. If you identified or if you said, hey, I'm openly gay and trying to serve in the military, they would process you out, no questions asked. I worked with a guy who came out, said he was openly gay, and shortly after, he no longer was with us because of that policy. We had to sign paperwork saying that we understand this and whatnot. Fast forward a few years, hey, you can openly serve in the military. And the funny thing is no one cared. Hey, I don't care if you were gay, openly gay and whatnot. Can you do the job? Yeah, cool, man, do the thing. So it was never a thing, then it became a thing. Same with transgender and gender dysphoria. It was never a thing and it was fine. Then it became a thing and it was like a hot topic. Then it kind of went away because people were just doing the thing on a day-by-day basis. And now they're doing away with it again. So we've seen this in the past. It's been a thing, not a thing, been a thing, not a thing. But regardless, now in 2025, it's no longer going to be a thing. So again, do you agree with this policy? Do you not agree with this policy? Let's talk about it in the comment section below. And this is my first long video in a long time, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it.